Hey everybody, KMO here, and what I have here for you is a special episode of the KMO show. It is actually a 6-year-old episode of the Sea Realm podcast. It's a conversation with Brent Badnarak. I'm uploading it here as a special bonus episode, and really the point is to use the automatic transcription functions of this website, rss.com, to create a transcript of the conversation, which I can then either clean up for publication or more immediately just share with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever large language model I'm discussing things with at the moment. But I thought it might be interesting to you as well, so I'm going to leave this up even after the transcription is done. And what I would just draw your attention to is that this is 2020. From around, I would say, 2007 through 2015, 16, somewhere in there, I was a pretty devoted adherent and articulator of the peak oil fast collapse narrative. But I started to get uncomfortable with it, and I endured internal friction with it as I continued to represent it publicly for a while. And then in 2019, in a Sea Realm Vault conversation with Bob Brown, which I've also put up on this feed, I basically just came out and said it. I'm over it. I see peak oil collapse fixation as much more of a psychological phenomenon than really a thermodynamic phenomenon. And in fact, thermodynamic fatalism is a particular mental habit of the folks who were, and in some cases still are, fixated on this notion of a rapid cascading failure of critical infrastructure due to a shortfall of hydrocarbon energy. Anyway, this is all in the service of a book that I'm not exactly writing just yet, more just sort of brainstorming, but it is a follow-up to my 2010 book, Conversations on Collapse, and this book, the working title is Getting Over Collapse. So if you are monitoring this RSS feed, you are likely to get occasional, at least, updates on the progress of that book and have some notion as to how my thoughts came together. Anyway, here is my 2020 conversation with Michael Badnarak.
If you speak the truth, have a foot in the stirrup.
Hello, and welcome to another installment of the Sea Realm podcast. I am your host, KMO, and this is episode number 555. It's complicated, with guest Brent Badnarak, prepared for release onto the World Wide Web on Thursday, April 9th, 2020, or 2020. Anyway, this conversation that you're about to hear is not a whole conversation. It's the first half of a conversation, maybe a little more, with Brent Badnarak, who has been a guest on the Kunstlercast and who contacted me via email after my last podcast, which featured James Howard Kunstler. Like me, he's somebody who used to really subscribe to the peak oil worldview and now hasn't divorced it, but is not so convinced. Although he's still more in that camp than I am. I won't say a whole lot here at the beginning of the podcast. I have received a lot of great feedback since the last podcast. I can't share it all with you in this episode, but Sea Realm Vault subscribers will get quite a dose of it in the next episode. All right, here is my conversation with Brent Badnarak.
You're listening to the Sea Realm podcast. C stands for consciousness.
Alrighty, hey, I'm here with Brent Badnarak, and this is the second time we've spoken, although the first time was like half an hour ago, and it was maybe 3 minutes. We have James Howard Kunstler in common.
Yeah, I was on his podcast last year. Been following both him and you for a while, and I consider Jim a friend as well. So yeah, some common lineage, I think.
Very good. So you're familiar with the C-Realm podcast beyond just the crossover with James Howard Kunstler?
Yes. You know what? I really don't know how long I've been listening to you. Probably about 6 or 7 years. And kind of going into what we're going to talk about, I listened to you and Jim and Chris Martinson and just a plethora of all the same names that probably everyone's listened to religiously. Just whatever I was pissed that y'all wouldn't come out with more content, right? Because I'm waiting for it. And then about, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, I stopped cold turkey. And I just, for a couple years, I didn't listen to anyone, go search y'all out. And then I recently started listening to you again, and I heard how you've changed your stance. And I was like, okay, I've had my own journey with a lot of similar check marks, if that makes any sense.
Who was it that said, when the facts change, I change my mind? What do you do, sir?
Oh, no, I don't know. Who did say that?
Somebody can look it up.
Yeah.
Not me, not right now.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to just jump into the topic of?
Why don't you paraphrase the email that you sent to just get this correspondence started?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I listened to you and Jim talk, and it was my interpretation was that you have just completely exited the doomer side of things. You just don't think it's possible. You are, I'm going to say upset, or whatever the word you want to use is, that the last 10 years of your life might have been negatively influenced by this mentality. And Jim is still on the mind of the long emergency still going on, especially with everything that's going on now. This is the collapse. And, it was just, y'all were going to bet to see who won.
Yeah,
is that about right?
Check in 1 year, exactly. He said that the Dow Jones would be down around 5,000. I said it would be above 20. So we'll see. We'll see. Now, I don't think that the collapse of industrial civilization is impossible. I agree with John Michael Greer that it is a process that will play out over centuries, and a lot can happen between now and the new medieval dark age. I don't think we're going back to I don't think we're going medieval, as Jim likes to say. Just, we know too much. I mean, so much of what we think of as, the medieval European social structure was a product of the very limited knowledge that, folks had on a wide swath of topics. So I don't think we're going back there. Now, what we're going to is going to be complicated, weird, messy, scary, and more difficult to visualize than simply a return to, say, the 1400s. I think that's the major advantage that worldview has, is it's very easy to see it in your mind's eye.
Yeah, see, I'm on the same line as you now. It's going to be emergent. What that is, I don't know. I just kind of look at it as math now. What are the probability that we go back to the 14th century? Well, I mean, there's a number. What that is just what we decide. And then that
number that's higher than zero.
Yeah.
But maybe not much higher.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe not, right? But we can all come up with all these different ideas of what it's going to be. But let's just talk about kind of two things. One, that's just idea of emergency. Well, let's not talk about what it's going to be. Let's just talk about what it has, the process in history. In history, it kind of shows that it's chaotic, painful, right? Lasts a long time, can last a long time, right? Yep. And do I think that our technology is just going to poof and go away and never be used again? No, I don't. But I think more of in time. I think more of in time of like, okay, today we're going to go through a trough. Now, how deep is that trough and how long does that trough last? And that's where, so now let's go to the second thing, which is just our mindsets. And I think this is, for the last 10 years, this mindset of, oh, this is going to happen for sure. It's right around the corner. And whatever theme you particularly enjoy thinking about it, whether it was zombies. My particular brand was one, a financial collapse, or two, an EMP. Like I thought it was not only from, the Russians or the whoever, but just from a solar flare. I was like, these I think are actually probable. So that's where my doomer mentality came from. And then that doomer mentality, man, what did it do to my life, both good and bad? And that's what I emailed you the other day, where it was, my sense of you is, well, it's really just my sense, because I'm just projecting what I feel onto you. And that is, you lost 10 years. The most blunt way to put it, because I feel like there's definitely a time that I felt like I lost 10 years of my life with the mentality of being a doomer and not, hey, this system's great, all puppy dogs and ice cream, keep that corporate job, get that picket white fence, the 401k, and I'm going to have the same life that my mother and my father and my grandparents had. And I never thought that was a possibility. So I made a lot of decisions in my life where I think you and I are on the same page of a possible wasting of 10 years. Is that right?
Well, those 10 years happened and experiences accumulated and I made contacts and, it wasn't entirely wasted. But for me, the tragedy of my doomer phase was that it came at exactly the wrong time. It made me seem absolutely insane to my now ex-wife. And I basically didn't get to live with my kids as they were growing up. That's what it cost me.
That's a big cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just career and financial stuff. I've always been kind of a career suicide guy anyway. Give me a good corporate job and I will burn out very quickly and quit in a huff. Very quickly means 2 years. That's about my usual span.
Hey, if we're not the same, we rhyme. So yeah. And I wonder if that doomer mentality magnified that. Right?
I think I've got a deep-seated anti-authoritarian streak, probably genetic. And that puts me in a bad position, with regard to employers. Hey, all we've revealed about you so far is that you know who I am and you know who Jim Kunstler is and you know who Chris Martenson and probably John Michael Greer and Dmitry Orlov, all those names. But who
Technosphere,
are you?
love it.
Who are you and what are you about and how'd you get to what you're doing and, what are the salient details?
Sure. I guess trying to figure out the starting point is always tough for me, but I think my best thing is when I got into the military. I got in at 26 and I became an officer in the Army. And why I say that is because when you go through officer candidate school, you're eligible for a $25,000 loan from USAA for like 0% or something incredibly small. So I had a college degree. I thought I was a little bit smarter than the average Joe. So I took that 25 and I went to Edward Jones, and I put $25,000 in the market. I took whatever advice she gave me.
What year was that?
2007. Right. So I was like, man, I'll get a little bit of interest. Everyone seems to be killing this. Everyone's telling me to do it. So even if I make 2%, I'll be up 2% because I'm paying zero interest on this loan. Like that's all I knew. And I got deployed in all of 2008. I went to Afghanistan and I just watched that 25,000 do this and then all the way down. And I got back to my next duty station in the beginning of 2009 and it was in Hawaii. And it was just house after house after house foreclosed on out there. And it was a big problem with the military because people would buy homes, they'd get transferred 3 years and they were making money, but these mortgages were huge, $400,000, $500,000. And all of a sudden the price started dropping that these military guys couldn't sell their home. And they're sitting there telling the Army, like, I'm going to go bankrupt. I can't leave. So what I'm doing is I'm telling you how my doomer mentality started coming up. So that's where it all started. I learned everything about gold. I started investing in precious metals and silvers and guns and bullets and all that kind of stuff. Like, I was starting to prep, and I was a military guy, so I was prepping in the way that I knew how to prep. Mm-hmm. Spent 7 years, 2 deployments in the military. My last tour was 12-13. I was on an SFAT, and
you were on what?
SFAT, Security Forces Advise and Assist Team, and what it was us training the Afghans to be a professional military. So we were advisors. So me and 3 other guys went out with 30 Afghans every day, advising, being the liaison between the ANA, that's the Afghan National Army, the Afghan Border Patrol, like all different levels of their military and police. And we were a coordination center. So I did that, and that's just a rough job. Our battalion and brigade commanders, they wanted to run missions, which, hey, if I was them, so would I. The president had this idea that we were just going to be advised teams, and that's no direct action. But if you're a lieutenant colonel and you want to be a colonel, if you're a colonel, if you want to be a general, you got to kind of make a name for yourself.
You got to do something.
You got to do something. Yep. And after that deployment, I got home and I was like, you guys are cool, but you ain't that cool. and I left. I also had this fear of financial collapse because I'm watching what's going on with the banks. I'm watching what's going on with, QE1, QE2, TARP, Clash for Clunkers, all these different things. Like, I had the Ron Paul mentality at that point, libertarian, like, you got, finances to me is kind of simple. I know there's a government accounting and everything, but that was shenanigans. Those shenanigans, and we should just call it what it is, shenanigans. And I was just like, oh, they're not going to be able to do it. We're in the eye of the storm, and I thought that eye of the storm was going to be 2-3 years, and now comes back full circle. It turned out to be 10. But after I got out of the military, I went to work for Ernst Young in New York City. I was working for all the major banks, doing financial services, JP Morgan's, Morgan Stanley, all that kind of stuff. Did that for 2 years, just it's corporate welfare. And I'm kind of like you. I kind of just saw it and I was like, this isn't me. I love the city, but it just burnt me out. So I came back home to Dallas, Texas, went and got my MBA. Have been doing business consulting, doing my own thing, and completely out of it. I got into yoga. I was a huge yogi, got out of the doomer, sold all my ARs, like went vegan for a while to try to heal my stomach. So then I got into all types of organisms and soil. I became a huge fan of just soil and learning about it. And that's what I'm kind of doing now. And, but I was doing business consulting in Fort Worth, loving my life, making decent amount, doing yoga, had a girlfriend, and completely out of the mindset until about 2 years ago when I started watching society collapse with what I consider this like kind of disease of the mind with the social justice warrior. Like it pulled me back into the politic realm. And then through that, I started seeing what was going on. And now the last 3 months, man, I'm right back into the doomer lifestyle. So, that's kind of me right now. I've got some plans where I'm at in a small town in Oklahoma because I left Fort Worth. I got out of there 3 weeks ago. I'm not going to be in a major city. I'm just not. It doesn't seem like a good idea to me right now.
Right.
So I'm in Durant, talking to my MBA guys in Fort Worth and my Army buddies all over the country who are working at major corporations and getting ready for that emergency that's coming. And, I just think this one's going to hurt.
All right. Well, you are starting to toy around with vlogging as well. So I was watching a nearly an hour-long sort of unscripted ramble, and something that you said in it, repeatedly was that right now everything is in play. Stuff that wasn't possible a year ago and won't be possible a year from now is possible right now. And that's me elaborating on what you said. What you said is everything is in play. So let you elaborate on that. Yeah.
That kind of stream of consciousness video I put out there for family and friends. Yeah, I just got to the conclusion. I fast forwarded, 3 weeks ago when the whole supply chain thing really started coming out and the disease, you started to see what was coming. I extrapolated a couple years, and what I see is what I consider the world is in play on an economic front, on a societal front, on a geopolitical front. And what I say is not only has the United States never been more vulnerable, the world has never been more vulnerable. And why I say that is it seems to me in history when debt gets too big, or really not even debt, let's just say when resources start getting restrained from big countries, a leader has one of two options. One, they take responsibility and they try to dig themselves out, or two, they refocus people's anger onto an enemy, and they go and have a war for resources, and to the victor goes the spoil. Debts get erased for the winner. Just kind of what happened for us in World War II. We weren't in a good spot after the Depression. It lasted 15 years. And a lot of people say that the economy of the United States got better because of World War II. That's partially right. The economy of the United States got better because of World War II, and we won it. And we got to remember that. So what's in play right now? Every major country with a major military has options, and they've all got their own versions of Henry Kissinger's. They probably have 10 of them, and they're looking at the chessboard. So my girlfriend's from Italy, and her family's in a small town. They're doing fine, right? They got their own garden. They got a place on the countryside. It's great. Her brother's in Rome. Her brother's locked down. He can't get to the country. He'd love to be able to. He waited too long. All right. The European Union is in a lot of trouble, I think. I mean, I think we can look at the tea leaves and go, they're going to have some struggles. They've closed down the borders between them, each other. Italy is remembering this, right? France did the same thing. Everyone's each for themselves. Well, they don't have a unified military. Well, if I'm Russia, maybe I've got a neighbor right there that has potentially a lot of wealth that I can scoop in and get them pretty quickly with not much effort. I mean, the Germans don't have a standing army. The UK might a little bit. The EU, what does the EU have? And America, we might be able to go help, but we got our own problems right now. The world has never been more vulnerable. Maybe we do a preemptive strike and make Europe a colony of us just to protect them. That sounds incredibly crazy. I told that to my Italian girlfriend. She's like, I'd rather be a colony of the United States than of Russia. And that's her immediate response. And I can hear the war drums from our side. Go read the comments of people. You're starting to hear China over and over again. Whose fault is this? China's. Right? You're starting to hear the newscasters blaming China a little bit more each day. And all that is to me is in the background, those war drums. And I mean, I'm kind of a follower of Jordan Peterson, right? I kind of like that idea of responsibility. But what helped me understand this world was when he talked about IQs, and there's actually a uniform distribution and what that means mathematically. And you understand what people's cognitive levels are. And you understand that some of these high concepts have to get filtered over and over, and it's got to be dumbed down, but not really. And I'm not saying that as an insulting way, but it just has to get consumable. And when the mass of people, the crowd, the zombies, the herd, whatever, when the mass of people go, well, this is China's fault that I'm hungry, that I don't get my stuff from Walmart, that life has become more difficult, right? Well, we got 12 carriers. We got lots of dudes in uniforms with lots of guns. I'm not even saying we're wrong to do it, but that's what I can see happening. And anything is possible. You and Jim were talking about the Dow being 5,000 or 20,000 in a year. I say look at a map today and then look at a map in a year. And I would put a lot of money that something's going to change. I was watching the news last night in Hungary. he just got that he has unlimited power for as long as he wants, dictatorship for the coronavirus. I mean, hey, maybe he's legit about that, but power corrupts, right? And if they get pissed, he's going to go, there's some country, I would guess, around him that he can go get pretty quick. And now you hear what I'm saying? Like, so much can change. You're talking about the Dow, I'm talking about the map.
Yeah, my suspicion is the map won't change that much in the next year. I think over the next 10, 15, 20 years, I think there's a more than negligible chance that China is going to break up into a few different regional powers because they don't have the geographical advantages that, the United States has. They're basically a bunch of little island nations inside of this really mountainous area. They don't have good, overland transportation between the different areas. They're really prosperous cities, are down on their southern coast, pretty far from, the capital, the political and military capital. They are dependent on energy resources from their far west that is next to all the stands, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all the Afghanistan. And they have their own internal Muslim population that they are really brutally repressing. So they're not making a lot of friends over in the stands, although they do have some sort of pragmatic, of the moment business partners. But I think China's facing some problems that the United States doesn't have. The United States isn't even close to facing the problems that China has. I don't see any reason or advantage for the U.S. military to invade China or to attack them, bomb them, send nuclear missiles. I think the best thing to do is going to pull back to our Pacific allies, which are all, in this chain of islands around outside of China, and just sit back and watch China sort of disintegrate and flail. And then if they get desperate and they try to, they try for a military solution, as you say, the U.S. has got, its Navy is bigger than the rest of the world put together. There is no challenging the U.S. Navy, even with their supersonic, carrier-busting cruise missiles.
Yeah, and hey, I'm with you. I said 1 year, you said 10. Like, I don't really mean 1 year. This stuff, like Greer talks about, it happens over a longer period of time, right? It's not a movie. So I'm with you on that. And, what you were telling me about China and everything you just said, all I hear is it's complex. And what do we know about complexity theory? Well, there's just that many more things where it can break. And then what's going to be, what's going to be the one? Right now with the global supply chain as it is, I mean, this is how I see it. Okay. When I talk to business owners, I go, what is you got a business and it's a circle, and half of it is whatever your service or product is. The other half is running your business, right? So what is that other side of the coin? Well, it's keeping 16 plates all spinning at the same time, and it's an art form, right? All right, so you get that going, you got all those plates spinning. Now extrapolate that to all the companies all over and how they're all intertwined. With the oil shock, with what that did, I think it poked that global supply chain, and it's easy for me to say we don't have the resiliency built in. We just don't have the resiliency put in. And we've got it to the razor edge of profitability, just in time, all these different things. Even if our economy was good, there's no escaping this. That virus shutting everything down, it just knocked it all over. So, I mean, it's just complex. We just have complex structure after complex structure after complex structure. And it's a bullwhip, and it's just going all the way through it, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that sounds reasonable. And I think there's evidence every night on the news that this is what's going to be happening.
All right.
Also, and now that I think I just went on a rant for nothing. So
no, that's all right. Well, I was going to say one unfortunate. I mean, even when I was deep into the peak oil scene, there's good information to be gleaned there. There's some rock solid thinking that a lot of people, the world would be better off if more people understood the concept of energy returned on energy invested.
Yep.
But unfortunately, a guy named Joseph Tainter made a name in the peak oil scene with his book, The Collapse of Complex Societies or Complex Civilizations. And he's the one who really introduced the concept into the peak oil conversation that the more complexity you layer into a system the more breaking points it has, and the more expensive it is to maintain those higher levels of organization. There's some truth to that, but really the thing you should understand when it comes to complex systems is the more complex and interconnected a system is, the more you get seemingly nonlinear behavior and counterintuitive outputs. Complex systems don't crash catastrophically because they don't tend to be brittle. It is simple, brittle systems that are either working or they're failed. The more complex a system is, the more potential states it has. And when it does fail, it tends to fail in weird ways, but it doesn't crash all the way to the bottom level of potential complexity. It collapses down to what is sustainable, which might not be that much of a drop, which is why John Michael Greer is talking about the cascading sort of catabolic collapse that takes place over these many stair-step, episodes over a long period of time. That makes sense to me because every time, there is a new shock, which knocks out some of the supports in this structure. It is a very complex structure. It's going to collapse into a shape that almost nobody anticipated. And it's not going to be a total collapse. And there is going to be the opportunity to start to rebuild. And in some ways, things really will be hitting new highs. They'll be working better than ever in some ways. One thing I really appreciate, I'm always looking for the silver lining in our current situation. The obvious one is we are going to realize that the more efficient you make a just-in-time delivery system, the more, the more sacrifice you make in terms of the resiliency of the system. So hopefully we're going to try to, source more, build more, get our resources locally here on the continent. And what a wealth of natural resources we have in the North American continent. We are better positioned to do that than just about anybody. It's just, we're going to have to sacrifice some profits from people who can afford to make that sacrifice, point blank. The people who just got trillions of dollars handed to them as the opening gesture in, hey, can we do something to help workers? They didn't need the money, but those are the folks that are going to have to take a haircut in order to bring manufacturing, bring raw resource production back to this country. And that has to be done. So that's wish number one. And that's sort of the obvious one. But I'm also hoping that, the longer this lockdown goes on, the more obvious it becomes that it isn't really required that everybody be doing everything they can to generate economic activity so that they can make money, so that they can buy food and, pay the rent. It's pretty clear that it takes a tiny fraction of the total potential working population to supply all of us with our basic needs. The more automation progresses, the more we're going to have to come to grips with that reality. But this virus is showing it to us right now. We don't need automated burger flipping robots to demonstrate to us that it doesn't take that many people to feed all of us. And the fact that all of us need money to pay rent and, to maintain our credit ratings and to buy various things, it's just not necessary that we're all be scurrying around like hamsters on a wheel all the time trying to make as much money as possible. We would be better off, a lot of us, putzing around in our garden, learning about soil, studying things, playing chess. There's a lot better uses for a human mind than, being on a phone all day, harassing people, trying to collect debts. There's a lot of economic activity that we would be better off if it just went away. And nobody has to starve.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't disagree in theory on a lot of that stuff. But also, I've kind of, I don't know, I think it's my age. I had some health problems a few years ago. I don't know. I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way with all this stuff. What you're talking about, I agree with you. A lot of it's annoying. I don't know. I think everything, I don't agree on that it takes so few of us to do this thing. And I think only time will tell on that. I think that we're stressing it out. But on the automation and then on the people who didn't need the money were the first ones who got a lot of it. Listen, I listened to you and Jim, and I'm a complete agreement with you. If this reset happens, it's not going to make everyone square. The rich are going to get rich and the poor are going to suffer.
It's going to accelerate the process that was already underway, has been for a long time.
Absolutely. Okay, but I take a step back from that. And I take a step back from that and just think I'm a science teacher. And Remember those stories they said where when you have a ton of rabbits, the hawks eat all the rabbits and reproduce until they get to be such a big number, there's no more rabbits anymore, then they have to die out, and the rabbits come back, and it's always this kind of balance. I just think the human colony tipped past its keys. I just think we worldwide, we got too big. It was a hell of a thing we did. I mean, going down the highway in a Honda going 80 miles an hour, looking at a BMW from Germany and some other car from London, and me and this Japanese car just racing down. That was amazing what we did. It's amazing. I'm impressed, even with all the pollution and even with all the silliness that we as humans are. You're right. Complex systems are what we're good at. I just think we just went a little too far. And then this thing happened, right? And even if the economy was good, because people are blaming the bad economy, even if there was no tensions, this thing where we're at in time of history with what we've done, and the fact that we just didn't have the foresight, because no one's perfect, but we didn't have this foresight to put the resiliency in there. I don't see this as a conspiracy theory doomer thing anymore. I go, okay, this is what we did. This is a pretty scientific, I think, model of what happened and what's going to happen. And yeah, we're going to have all different types of personalities doing all different types of things. And that's just humanity, and it's a show, and we get to watch it and hope for the best, right? And you want to talk about some positive things that's going on here? Okay, again, I'm kind of a Jordan Peterson fan. I am so thankful that he came out there and started preaching this idea of responsibility to all these young men. They were soaking it up. All these 20-something-year-old men, great, maybe they're the ones that shoulder the burden of what we're about to go through. Maybe they're the ones that whatever is emergent, they are the next wave. Because I look at a lot of the generations out there, and I don't see resiliency in their mindset and emotional state. I don't see resiliency and strength. I see a lot of victimhood stuff out there. I see a lot of laziness. I mean, we're the fattest country in the world. We're just the most obese. We're the richest. We had a little comeuppance that we're going to have to come down a little bit. And I'm okay with that because there's opportunity. Hey, you can do just as well in times of chaos as you can in good times. You're smart, you're capable. They did kind of hit the reset button. People like you and I, a lot of different people, hey, we know some things. Maybe it's time we start capitalizing on it, because plumbers are going to start doing very well. We're not going to need so many people who are good at Excel or programming. I just don't think we are. We're going to need some people who know how to do things. And hey, take it for what it is. I can tell you what I'm planning on, or what's going on in my mind, and some of the things that we're thinking about doing. Worm farms. We're 2 hours north of Dallas. All of a sudden, people want to start gardening because they need food, because the supply chain is still interrupted and they're not getting the amount they want to. Oh, and also they're like, hey, we don't want to depend on some government to bring it to us. Let's have a little bit source of our own food. Fertilizer, local fertilizer. Get local. And what does that mean? It means there is going to be a lot of customers trying to figure out what they need to survive. A lot of opportunity out there. And I'm encouraged by that. Now, how we as a society do it with the guns and the obesity and the Prozacs and all that kind of stuff, and the left versus right, there's a lot of people who are pissed off right now. Well, we're going to have to see how that all plays out. And it's just, I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that it's going to be a bumpy ride. Now, how bumpy? Every city will be different. And who comes out of it well? I don't know. I think every mayor of any town should be going and saying, okay, where I'm at, there's a local butcher. Great. He's got, not only is he a butcher, he's a slaughter. So that's a really nice resource to have with a lot of cows around. Well, there were about 4 people that worked there. Okay, so, not insulting them, but who are they? Well, that wasn't a very highfalutin job that someone with a degree would have. And you don't see a lot of kids doing that. Well, I don't want any of those 4 people to work their ass off, run themselves down, get sick, and die. They have a skill set that we need. We should be identifying every skill set we need in a mayor of 15,000 and start putting interns. Go to the senior class, which one of these people are capable, and then subsidizing all these essential businesses. And I'm not talking about liquor stores, right? I'm talking about we should double up on people who do the water treatment. We should double up, right? That's where we need to be sitting there going, what's a good insurance policy? Well, gardens are a good insurance policy. Doubling up on butchers are a good insurance policy. Getting local. We got to get local. And if we do that, we'll get out of this better. If not, we're coming in for a rocky road. It's going to be a rough landing.
You know, I live in rural Vermont, and there are various farms around. And all of the bigger farms import seasonal labor from Jamaica. Because the Jamaicans, they know how to work, they know how to do agricultural work, and they come over and they work their asses off for 6 or 8 months, and then they head back to Jamaica. You know, in Vermont, we have a brain drain problem. The ambitious young people, the smart young people, as soon as they graduate from high school, they're gone. You know, or if they go to college and stay, as soon as they're out of college, they're gone. And, you know, who's left? Well, there's a solid cohort of nail bangers around here, you know, guys with solid construction skills, you know, manual labor, a good work ethic. But we also have a lot of people, like we have a lot of heroin addicts around, and we have multi-generational people living on public assistance, you know, people who they've never known a situation where mom and dad lived together and dad had a job and paid the rent. I mean, that's as alien to their experience as going to Afghanistan is to mine.
Right.
Never served in the military. So, yeah, I don't like to harp on this because it makes me sound like an arch conservative, but there are a lot of people who are absolutely unsuited just based on their life's experience to do anything for themselves. Anything at all. And I agree with you. I mean, I'm not really in the Jordan Peterson demographic. I'm a little old for that, but I did buy his book for my son. I really appreciate that Jordan Peterson is like on college campuses. He's in the same arena as the social justice warriors who are preaching that, you know, anything that makes you the slightest bit uncomfortable is the equivalent of a war crime, you know, committed against you by the evil patriarchy. And, you know, life isn't like that. Life is uncomfortable. And if you are actually going to do something that you haven't done before, you're going to experience a period of, you know, just cognitive discomfort. That is a sign that you're working, that you're doing something. If you're comfortable all the time, you are, you know, you're degenerating. Yoga's not.
You don't do it. No, you don't do any shadow work. Yeah. I mean, and yoga is not comfortable. You're absolutely right. That's the whole point of it. When you get in an uncomfortable situation, you learn how to breathe.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what it is. Life is uncomfortable. Okay, so it was impressive what we did. It was impressive what we did. We got to a place that was so good that they had to come up with a term like microaggression. Mm-hmm. Because we got rid of all the big ones. And then that was the next thing. I mean, it was so ridiculous. I watched feminists. The people who were fighting the feminists were the trans rights activists. They had turned on themselves at that point. But where I'm at now and why I think that nonsense is already over is, hey man, 5 million people have already lost their job. Another 2 million are right around the corner, and then 2 million after that. Like, everyone's about to be a victim. So no one's going to care about all this silly nonsense. It's going to go away. And this cancel culture and all this other thing, like, these are positive of what's just happened. Because people they're not just going to be on their phone, BuzzFeed, wasting time because they got nothing to do. It can't happen. So here, you know, you said it sounds like a starch Republican. I mean, hell, I'll be that guy. I'll be it. Living life, you're walking on a tightrope. Survival, I mean, get a job, get money, food. I mean, you still have to do it. But what was amazing about what we did was we had safety net after safety net after safety net. We had it. Well, what happened? I don't even dislike Trump. I don't like him. I don't dislike him. He gave all the money to the corporations. He did. That's what happened. So now, if he's going to bail out everyone, including all these social programs, the money's not going to be worth anything, right? So that's not going to happen. He already chose. So all these people that you've identified in your town and that are everywhere who are completely incapable to handle anything, that wealth transfer just happened. It already happened. So that's coming down the pipe. And I don't see us handling that too well. So I'm looking at good news of there's opportunity, there's things you can do, but at the same time, the day the Russians and the Saudis had that oil war, oil market share, whatever they want to call it, and the oil price dropped, it sent that shockwave through the financial market, because now they can never value shale industry again. They have to price in that risk factor of they can have those shocks. It was just too big of our economy. It's just sending ripples throughout it. This is what happened. That was the day the world changed. So I'm no longer a doomer. I am, this is the new world, and the playout's going to be huge. And what do you do? Like, what is your plan? Do you have a plan yet?
Well, I was just in the process of moving to Puerto Rico when this lockdown put everything on hold. But my plan is to keep, drawing comics and making podcasts and shooting videos. I just wanted to do it in a place with more people, a place with a bit more social dynamism, because I am not cut out for small town Vermont. It's not simpatico with my personality.
4 years was enough. No good yoga.
Yep. Well, I mean, I can still do yoga here, but
I can't do it by myself. I have to go to a studio. I'm so lazy that way. I need someone to tell me what to do.
Yeah, I agree. I will not sit down. I will not roll out the yoga mat and do a solid 90 minutes on my own.
Forget it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let me ask you this then, because I like to know the holes in my argument.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think I was either unreasonable or I went too far, or anything you think that I'm kind of wrong at? Because I'd love to know.
Combining some stuff that you said just now with some things that I heard in your vlog, sounds like you're holding on to some peak oil talking points that the last decade has just demonstrated never held any water.
Okay.
Most of the hydrocarbons in the ground are in shale seams. What we consider to be conventional oil, where just it's near the surface. It's a pool rather than, in the pores of rocks, and it's under such pressure that you can just pierce the ground and it comes up. That was the icing.
I agree with this.
Yeah, that's not the bulk of the hydrocarbons available to us. And, the super majors, the big multinational oil companies, they don't do shale. They don't like it. It doesn't produce enough money for them. It's too technically complicated. There's too much variation from, even in one play, there's all kinds of different variations. You have to use this very sophisticated microseismic technology to find out exactly where to, drill that next well, or where to re-drill, at what depth to re-drill an existing well. They don't go in for it. So you've got this whole ecosystem of new fracking companies, some going for oil, some for gas, some doing both, but mostly not both. Mostly they're pretty specialized. And they have a dozen executives each, maybe 25 employees total, and they pop up out of nowhere. They operate until, something goes wrong. The company goes broke. They file for Chapter 11. And then the various people who are doing that go off and start different companies, and they get financed again. And, you can say that that's all chicanery, but as long as we run on oil, the advantages of having it here, getting it from home rather than having to have this military apparatus that allows us to lay claim to oil on the other side of the planet and to get in bed with evil fuckers like the Saudis, there's so much advantage to having this domestic source that who cares what chicanery we get up to? It's cheaper than a global military. It's basically it's a nationalized endeavor at this point, but we don't acknowledge that it's nationalized. We let various players, pop up and make a killing at it in a short period just to keep it going. But if you compare that to the price of a global, military police force, it's free. It's not going to collapse tomorrow. It's no more going to collapse tomorrow than it was going to collapse in 2007 when Jim Kunstler was making these exact same arguments, that the financing is irrational. It doesn't matter that the financing is not irrational. We need that oil for reasons other than just making money.
So I don't disagree with a single thing you said, right? At all. And in this new world, yeah, it might not matter how much it costs because we do just nationalize it and we use it for ourselves. I don't think anything you said there was unreasonable. And I think, why couldn't that be a possibility? What I'm just saying is because the banks had such low interest rates since 0809, banks still had to make money, or they didn't have to make, they wanted to make money. The people wanted the bonuses. So what they did was they improperly priced the risk of these small ones. They kept on getting financed over and over and over again, just like you said. Well, that was because the banks, that was the only yield they could get. I mean, not the only one, but those were yields that were making the banks money. And these companies just kept on rolling over their debt, right? It was all, that's what I think Jim Kunstler was talking about, is it's all a financial three-card money thing. They just, because the interest rates were so low on the federal level, because the Federal Reserve didn't want anything to upset the apple cart, banks had to go find yield. They improperly priced it with this shale, especially the small to medium-sized guys, not the majors. But that made so much money for the banks that when that financing part, that's what I'm talking about, that financing part has to go away now for the banks as a money generator. And that alone, not having to do anything with the hydrocarbon, the oil in the ground.
You know, if the banks aren't able to provide the capital necessary to continue the production, then the federal government might have to step up and do it in a more, honest and direct way. But
yeah,
that is nowhere near the top of my list of concerns. Financing for hydrocarbon extraction, that's going to happen. That, worrying about that is like worrying about overpopulation on Mars. It's maybe someday in the distant future that's a problem, but there's much more acute things we have to deal with in the here and now.
Well, okay, so that is where I think it's just people's experiences and their education and what they know, right? You're probably right. I mean, what do I know, right? But my experiences is in finance world, right? My experience is going and understanding what happened, that why 0809 happened, and why the Federal Reserve did what they did. Okay, well, it was because of this idea of, the banking system is like the heart of an economy and cash is like the blood, and they want to keep this thing all going. And look, I'm not a Keynesian, and I'm not a, whoever the other guy, what was the other guy's name? Is Keynesian, or I don't know, the sound money Austrian
sound
guy.
Money astrologers.
Yeah. Sound money
are typically contrasted with like Austrian economists.
What was that one guy? There was Heineck or something like that. It doesn't matter.
He's one.
So I'm not.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm on one side of the fence or the other. What I'm saying is how our system runs on debt. That's why the small shale debt thing is so important, and it sends shockwaves through the system. So that's just my experience, and that's me reading the tea leaves saying that's a really interesting, complex, hard to understand problem that's going off right now. And yeah, man, unless you have a finance degree or you understand that world, it's like the overpopulation on Mars. And my understanding of it, I believe, is at a certain level why I think this is the important thing. And I can give examples of the bullwhip in the economy right now. Just the simple fact that that the Dow goes up 1,000, down 2,000, up 1,000. That's just that simple fact alone is that's all you need to know, that this thing is unwinding pretty violently. And if you know anything about the system, knowing that there's a violence in there, and knowing how options work and contracts, puts and margin calls and all these different terms, that's where finance is a huge problem. It's a huge, huge, huge problem. That's why the Federal Reserve said QE to whatever you need. And that's why the poor people are getting screwed. Like,
now, I hate to say this. I hate to bring this up.
Yeah.
But I'm totally partisan on the class level. I am against the oligarchs. I am for the working people. But when you give unlimited money to the ownership class, they don't go out and spend it on stuff.
No.
They try to lock it up and just keep it as, wealth. So they put it into the stock market. So when the stock market, they
one
put
of the
it in a lot of places, but they put it in the stock market, or if they own a company, a public company, they buy back their own stock, to increase the value of their stock, which increases their personal wealth. It's probably also going to increase the bonus they get. But they have all this money that they're not really spending on stuff. And if money is not circulating, then it's not functioning as the blood of the economy. And if it's not circulating, it's not playing that role, then you don't really get inflation. Like, people worry about hyperinflation. That, again, is one of these, overpopulation on Mars scenarios. I'm not worried about hyperinflation or even regular inflation. I think deflation is probably going to get us, because the money that gets given to the rich people just basically disappears. It goes away. They want it to grow, and so they move it around to different, growth areas. But those are all sort of distinct from the actual physical economy of stuff that we all depend on. And, hydrocarbons and fuel for machinery, that is real stuff. But when we're talking about 2008, we haven't mentioned mortgage-backed securities. That was a huge abstract, creation that dwarfed the real economy in terms of how much money was at play, how much counter risk was set up.
Leverage.
Right. All of our talk of, the 2008 financial chicanery and its relationship to hydrocarbon production, that is such a minuscule little sideshow in terms of that whole play. It was mostly just abstract bullshit that was falling apart. And if abstract bullshit falls apart, it's not a death blow. You just set a different abstract bullshit system.
I hear you. And from how we got out of the last 10 years, I look at it as a gift. Like, they did paper over it. They figured out a way to paper over it. And smart people figured it out, and that's why I got out of it. That's why I kept all my precious metals, but there got to a point where I just looked at them and hated them. I was resentful for them. I'm a military guy, and I sold all my ARs. I'm like, I am out of this. I put all that stuff in storage, and I was like, I'm never doing it again. They're smarter than me. They figured it out. And I did not think the other eye of the storm was coming. Okay, but this is what propelled me to leave Fort Worth, and it wasn't the virus. So if this is true, if these photos are true and not doctored, NASA had these photos of all of China pollution from January 1 to January 20th or something like 19th. And then there was Chinese New Year, which is that week long or however many days, and then a month after. And it showed in 2019 how the pollution was before New Year, how it decreased during New Year, and then how it ramped back up, right? Well, if these photos are real, from 2020, same time period, there's no pollution. There's no pollution. I mean, the factories were already shut down. And now you're starting to hear that they started shutting this down in December. They already knew. They were already clamping down on it. So what I hear from that is the factories that refill not only all of America's stores, because pretty much pick the number percentages made in China, but all the world. Like, China was the manufacturing engine for the world. So we weren't the only ones who got conned into this. They've been down since, let's just say, Jan 1, and they haven't still come back up yet. Some of them have with masks and some other things, and they're still producing whatever. But a big percentage was down, and I don't think it's come back up. I don't trust the news that it is coming back up. Now, I could be wrong, and I'm more than willing to accept that. But from what I hear, what I think makes sense, I don't think they're back up. And I think that all countries have shut down their borders because they realize this. They're all hunkering down. Like, name the countries who've shut down their borders, that nothing's going in or out. Germany, Canada, France, Spain, Italy, Singapore. They've all shut down. Trade stopped. You can look at the ports. It's empty. Well, we're talking about abstract stuff with MBSs and all that. I'm talking about goods. I'm talking about real things. And you got to think about it too in a way where it's like, okay, in the let's say there's a plant here that has, it does beans, it cans beans, and we grow the beans here, and everything's here. All right. Do we get the cans from China? Well, probably, because we get raw materials from them. And if we don't get the cans, we get the raw materials from China. Because not only we did offshore our manufacturing and our jobs, but we also offshored our pollution. So none of that stuff's getting built here or mined here or anything. It's all over there. Okay, well, what about the machinery? What about a machine that washes the beans? There's going to be a circuit board that goes out, and they've got some repair guy that comes in, diagnoses it, and says, okay, let me call and order this part. And because we're just in time, that probably came from China, because that's where we get everything. Or enough where the probability of something failing keeps on going up and up. So my contention, and I could be wrong, someone could prove this, and then I'm going to have to rethink everything, is a lot of stuff in China is still shut down. So that means it's on month 3 or 4. How long does it take to get back up? Well, being in the corporate world, I mean, I don't know, manufacturing, I'm going to guess 3 or 4 months, maybe longer, because up and down that supply chain, you don't know what's going to open when, and you're going to be waiting. So now that's a disruption. So not only are there goods not going to be in Walmart, but there might not be repair parts and the stuff that keeps the semis on the road, or the chemicals that keep all the water companies disinfecting our water, because probably all that stuff comes from China. I'd make a bet that it came from China. Everything does. And if they're not producing any stuff, maybe they're down 30%. Well, in that 30%, what do we have to have that we are not going to get? There's going to be one item. There's probably going to be a lot. And I'm just playing math. I don't have a social agenda here. I don't have a political philosophy. I don't have an economic theory. I just go, stuff's not coming.
You're talking about beans, and here's the thing. You don't have to put beans in a can. You can ship beans in a bag, dry. They don't need to be refrigerated, and then people, instead of just opening the can and pouring them in the pot, you soak them overnight.
Hey, yep, we're going to have to get creative.
If we have to do that because of this, that will be a benefit.
I agree. I agree. But how many humans do you know that can change overnight like that, or who have the forethought to go?
Though. I mean, yeah, people get into rigid patterns when they can afford to, but when you come to the point of, okay, you either have to do something different or you don't eat today, that's when people decide, you know what, I think I'm willing to do something that's outside of my comfort zone.
My mother started a sentence with, if people were smart, and I said, stop. You're right, but throw it off the table. I don't even hate humans. Like I heard you say, human beings suck or humans suck.
I don't believe that.
I don't either.
I made a video with that title, and so many people want that message that video has done very well. It was not my intention to feed that beast.
Yeah, me either. I am not talking down to anyone. I'm not. They did not become aware of what I think is important because of a ton of different reasons. They're not I'm not talking down to them. And hey, this was a line I told you in the email where, if this isn't the thing that brings emergence, then the system is the most resilient thing I've ever seen, and I will never believe that it can ever get destroyed. A comet can be coming down, and I will believe that we will make it through. Because I'm with you. If this thing works, if people do what they need to do and change, and it's all becomes a better thing, I'm in. Good for us.
Well, let me back off my position a little bit, if this is how it's coming across, because a extinction level event, dinosaur killing comet will kill our civilization too. We're not surviving that.
Right.
And you talked about a magnetic pulse or an EMP. If that was, an attack from another country, it's got to be detonated at a high altitude, which means it has to come in on a missile. Not many countries that are willing to get into a war with the U.S. have access to that technology.
That was just my flavor of choice back in the day.
But a coronal mass ejection that hits the Earth head on.
Yeah.
Those things are directional. That's not an omnidirectional pulse that goes out from the sun. It is definitely directional. So most of them miss us. But one that hits us square is going to take down the electric grid on half the planet, and it will be down for years. It won't be the end of our species, but it very well could be the end of our civilization. It's just that these events, while utterly catastrophic, and they're absolutely guaranteed to happen eventually, the timescales on which you estimate these things are huge. So if you're deciding, what you're going to major in college, don't think about the coronal mass ejection or the extinction level impact. Those are not the problems of an individual human lifetime. If they happen when you're alive, well, that sucks. I mean, that sucks because you can't prepare for that. But,
so that's all I think just happened. That's all I think just happened.
What's that?
It was no one's that event you talk about was the corona, and it was the pin that popped this economy thing. This whatever this economy thing is, popped it. So it was no one's fault. It just happened while at this moment in time. So I mean,
don't think it's the
I feel like
it's doing the damage, though. I think it's our maladaptive response to it and our lack of preparation, rational preparation that's really causing the damage. But I think this virus it's got training wheels on it. This is what I've been saying.
You're listening to the Sea Realm podcast with your host, KMO.
That was Brent Badnarak, and the conversation with Brent will continue in the next episode of the Sea Realm Vault podcast. And that will be Sea Realm Vault podcast episode number 361. Sunday, April 12th, 2020. Easter.
The light of consciousness shines on everyone, but not everyone gains access to the vault.
Hey everybody, KMO here, and wow, here we are, Easter 2020. This was the time, a few weeks ago, Donald Trump said we were going to come out of our huddle and get back to, economic action today. Probably not today, tomorrow. And that's not happening. And I don't like to listen to Donald Trump, and I'm not familiar with everything he said. Surely he said many a very stupid thing in the last couple of weeks. As I said in the podcast that you heard a few weeks back with Jim Kunstler, because I don't, go in for the absurd, hysterical, ridiculous criticisms that the left makes of Donald Trump, I come off as a Trump supporter. But I don't like the guy. I don't like his policies. And I find his personality off-putting, to say the least. And I think he has absolutely zero intellectual qualification to cope with the current situation that he really does need to be deferring to technocrats. Much as I hate to say it, I mean, there is a strong argument to be made for a pandemic is no time for democracy. And really, when it comes to public health, the measures that the government takes on behalf of the citizenry should never be up for a vote. Some people have informed reasons for holding a particular opinion on certain topics, and most people don't. Most people, myself included, have absolutely no basis for putting forth an opinion as to how many ventilators the federal government should stockpile in a time when there's no sight of a specific pandemic on the horizon. In hindsight, I think, yes, people like me can certainly have, hold the opinion and be justified in doing so that the number that was arrived at was inadequate. But I doubt it's because the technocrats and the, employees of government bodies like the CDC underestimated what would be necessary. I think, we've all heard of reports brought to light saying this is a possibility, and if, should a pandemic occur, we are not prepared for it. Such messages went unheeded. So I don't blame the technocrats. And there's just certain things that shouldn't be up for a vote. The methodology for municipal wastewater treatment should not be up for a vote because most people are not qualified to hold an opinion on that, and they're even less qualified to impose their opinion on people who know better. All right, so what you're going to hear in this episode is more conversation with Brent Badnarak, and I apologize. In the podcast that I put out, I think I pronounced his name Badnarak. Michael Badnarak was the Libertarian Party candidate I forget which election cycle, one of the the aughts, 2004 perhaps. That sounds about right. So I've heard and said Michael Badnarak many times. I've heard and said Brent Badnarak far fewer times, and I think I pronounced his last name Badnarak in the podcast. And before I get into the conversation with Brent Badnarak, the remainder of the conversation, there's about a half hour left. I want to say early on in the conversation, I oversimplify something. I basically say Moore's Law has come to an end and computers aren't improving anymore. And I completely understand. I even understood in the moment. I just didn't stop to correct myself that that's not true. The specific process, which has maintained a pretty consistent level of price performance improvements in computing hardware over the past several decades, is coming to an end. There's only the process has been shrinking the circuit patterns that are etched into silicon, and there is a limit as to how far you can shrink that before the pathways that you're sending electrons down don't really effectively convey electrons. They'll start to jump the track. That process, while nearing its end, hasn't completely reached its end, but more importantly, and you don't need to write to me to tell me this, I understand, there are other ways to improve computer performance, to improve the power of computer hardware other than just relying on Moore's Law of, increasingly smaller, denser circuits printed into chips. And likely, although I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, there will be a new computer paradigm which replaces integrated circuits altogether. Whether it'll be optical computing, quantum computing, DNA computing, there's something that none of us have ever heard of. I have no idea. Eventually, there will be a new methodology for creating computer hardware which produces improvements that are an order of magnitude or more over the current paradigm. But I don't have any expectation that that's going to happen, that I'll see it. It might not happen in my lifetime. It might happen 5 years from now, and I will, look silly for having made such a conservative statement. But I don't expect, artificial general intelligence, I don't expect to see in my lifetime. I know the very few singularitarians out there in the C-Realm Vault audience will disagree and think that I've just made an absurd statement. So it goes. This applies to both conversations that you'll hear in this episode. The first one is with Brent Badnarak, and the second one is some remainder conversation with James Howard Kunstler. We're in a time when events are moving rapidly, particularly with respect to the pandemic, and I think that opinions have a very short shelf life in this moment. If somebody makes a statement or a prediction which a couple weeks later seems far weaker than it was in the moment they made it, I think that's understandable and forgivable. And I hope that I will be forgiven for my misstatements in this period. But that is the risk when you knowingly talk into a microphone, record yourself, and put it out there for the public to evaluate, dissect, throw back at you. It's the risk you take. It's the risk I take. So I am inclined to be more forgiving of people who, make bold statements in public, which time is not kind to. And maybe as you listen to this segment of conversation with Brent Badnarak coming up, you'll understand why this thought came to mind. It occurred to me in editing the conversation with Brent that Barack Obama was the Marcus Aurelius of the American Empire. What am I talking about? Marcus Aurelius was an intellectual, sagacious Roman emperor. He wrote philosophy. I think he may have written poetry as well. He was the scholar emperor. And yet he was the embodiment of a corrupt system, and he left the empire, under the care of his reckless, irresponsible son Commodus. It seemed like he should have known better, but he didn't challenge the system, which was the basis of his power. And he didn't reform it in any meaningful way before he passed it off to somebody else. Okay, and with those disjointed comments out of the way, here is the conclusion of my recent conversation with Brent Badnarak.
So
I don't think it's the virus that's doing the damage, though. I think it's our maladaptive response to it and our lack of preparation. rational preparation that's really causing the damage. But I think this virus it's got training wheels on it. This is what I've been saying to various people when I talk to them about this issue, is that, this thing is largely sparing of young people, and it focuses mostly on older people and, like smokers and people with compromised immune systems. Imagine if it was the reverse. Imagine if this virus preferentially killed children and spared the elderly. We would be freaking out. I mean, utterly freaking out as a society. I would be right there with everybody else who had totally abandoned all rationality. And if it's my kids or your life, well, sorry, your life is forfeit. And those parents are like that. So, this virus, hopefully we can learn some things as a sprawling, chaotic, overbuilt, too complex system. We can adapt to this event and hopefully respond more adaptively to the next one, which could be much, much worse, objectively speaking, in terms of death rate and, even in terms of transmission rate. It could be worse.
See, I'm with you. Like, I think that's reasonable. I think this is kind of, again, what we started off on this. You have decided that this idea that it's going to the negative, you're just like, no, it doesn't work. Like, for the time I've been in here, here's the issues I have, and you're leaning more towards the positive. Hey, and we're just doing math in our head, and we're coming to a different conclusion. And I get that. And that's why I'm sympathetic to exactly what you're going through. Because I want to do it too. I just can't on this one.
I have one other item on my wish list for this pandemic.
Sure.
We're pretty much at the end of Moore's Law. Like, I'm talking to you on a 4-year-old laptop. And in terms of the processing speed and the size of the hard drive and what it can do, I have no justification for replacing it, even though, 2 or 3 laptops back, a 4-year-old laptop is a dinosaur. So Moore's Law has slowed down. I am hoping we get to a point where electronics go from being disposable consumer goods to durable goods. Like, you don't worry about paying $3,000 for a good laptop computer because it's going to last 15, 20 years, and that it will be as serviceable and able to handle new software, 10 years from now as it is the day that you buy it. And that, when we become less price sensitive when it comes to electronics, we'll be willing to pay the premium of having it built here, by unionized American workers making $25 an hour. Because if you don't plan to replace it next year, and we have a whole cast of people who get a new cell phone every single year, even though it cost them $2,000, if you expect it to last 20 years, you can pay for American built. And, that is an element in a prosperous society where everybody has something to do and is well taken care of by this economy.
See, okay, let me say, I would love to say that's a possibility, right? Because I agree with you. What's not to like? We're not digging up as many rare earth metals, so we're not polluting as much to get the stuff you need for the smartphone because you have it for 10 years. Yeah, I mean, it can't get that much better. It's the same thing, right? I'm with you in all that. Less pollution, bring some jobs back, 100%. But I just go back to kind of what you were talking about earlier, where if it gets bad, the rich are just going to get richer. They're just going to play their same games if it gets better. It's got to be the reset. Like these systems, like these companies, they can't get away from that model. That's just what they know. And the get local model, it has to emerge to take the place of what we have. Eventually, it has to grow into that, because these people aren't going to adapt. I mean, I was in the corporate world. It's just a mindset. Just like the culture of a country, there's no changing it. It's on its path, and it just continues that. I agree. I think that would be a lovely thing for things to get more local and things to be more permanent. But I just think for that to happen, it's just like a forest fire. It's got to burn all the way down for something like that to happen.
We may need a political revolution, like a real revolution where people who have not been elected but who have guns go into the office and say, you're not the office holder anymore.
And we hope that those people are the type of people we want doing it, right?
Invariably, they're not.
Because
they're not,
in any chaotic time, the person who picks up a gun and seizes power is not morally superior to the person who was holding power before. They're just more adaptable and they're more resilient. They've got grit. Whereas Jamie
or I would
Dimon
say,
is rich, but he doesn't have grit.
yeah, I mean, or I would say that the odds of them having both that grit and the moral fiber
Very
are pretty
unlikely.
low. Yeah, very low, right? We can hope for it. Like, let's really do it. But the odds just don't work out in that favor. Okay. All right. Well, hey, man, if people have resources and they're thinking about doing things, now might be a good time to go, there's some uncertainty of this world. The world is in play. There's a lot going on. Maybe the Republic of Texas comes back and is a thing. Well, is that the worst place in the world to be? I mean, there's some pros and cons. Maybe California tries to do it. Maybe the U.S. breaks up into regions, just like you were saying China does. I mean, that's where I'm talking about. I think that reset happened, and you can remake yourself into whoever you want right now, because the chaos is going to allow for just the delta is going to be pretty high.
What do you mean by that?
There's a financial calculation that they call it a delta,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the change in the volatility and the percentage, everything. It's the delta of a stock, and it's just another way financial people value stocks, right? So they call it the delta, the change. I think the delta on this one is going to be pretty high. Now, will it all be positive? Yeah, it could. Will it all be negative? It could. Could it be 50-50? It could. You just got to look at the probabilities.
So the delta is a measure of volatility?
Change, yeah.
Change? Okay.
Yeah, there's a volatility index, but yeah, the delta is a change. Mathematicians came up with it. I don't really understand it. Like, I just know the change, it's the delta. What's going to be the change, the spread kind of a thing.
So you say you got rid of most of your firearms?
Well, yeah, until this all happened, and then I used the old credit card and went back to what I know. Yeah. I mean,
I'm for decades I've been voting libertarian, which I will not be doing anymore. But I'm strongly in favor of the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms on an intellectual level. But I myself am unarmed. I have no weapons here in the where I live. I did get to fire an AR-15 last fall. What an anticlimactic experience. It's like this little toy. I got to fire a 12 gauge shotgun in the same outing, and that had some kinetic action. That was satisfying.
Right.
Pump action shotgun, that was for real. The AK-47 was like playing a video game. I mean, it doesn't make much noise. There's not much recoil. It's just, and it's a little gun.
Well, I don't know exactly what you shot. You might have shot like an AR pistol or something.
No, it was a rifle. But compared to the shotgun, it wasn't like I'm a large person.
Mm-hmm.
An AR-15 looks small when I'm home.
So you're saying the big black scary rifle wasn't as big and black and scary as you thought it was going to be?
It was black.
Okay.
I'll grant you that. It was painted black.
So, okay, for all the gun guys and girls who are listening to you, this is one of the things that just drives us crazy. There was a video that showed this guy, and he had, I think it was just an AR, and he was given a press conference of why this thing was the worst ever. And he couldn't even identify what it was. Like, he would call it a clip. He said it was a magazine. Like, he didn't know the caliber. And when gun people a lot of times talk to anti-gun people, you can ask them, what's the number? 90%? Well, have you ever fired a gun? And the answer is no. They know nothing about them. They know absolutely nothing. Because the truth is, guns and how they're built and what people can do are not nearly as bad as they think they are in one stance. But then kind of on the other stance, they can be wicked, and they can make them even worse because it's just a technology. It's a very simple technology. It's just metal. There's no circuitry in it. It's just all mechanical. And we can do a ton of things with it. So any of these people who talk about restrictions or this or that or bans or whatever, you automatically realize, one, they don't know anything about guns, or two, it's just a slow step to get them all banned. And most of the people who support that know nothing about guns. It's actually pretty funny.
And people who know nothing about guns but are really bent out of shape over assault rifles, they just can't seem to process. Because I've encountered and had conversations with many such people, and I point out, look, almost all gun crimes are committed with handguns. You know, all the gun crimes that involve a rifle is like 3%, and assault rifle is it's a subset of that 3%. It is a minuscule, it is the outlier, and you don't make laws based on the outlier cases in a rational society. But
right.
Those, that tiny fraction of that 3%, some of those incidents were, really telegenic and spectacular and attention grabbing. And in such moments, and we have this media that, they have to fill multiple channels of content 24/7. And if it involves violence and civil disruption, wow, that's exciting. They're going to play it over and over and over again. And for people who are just responding with their limbic system and not thinking about these things, every time they hear the story about the shooting, it's like they lived through it again. And so, we're living at a time of unprecedented personal safety. And yet, because of the media and because people have opinions about things they don't know anything about, really, we live in a psychological environment that is steeped in fear. People think that, they're in great personal danger. Well, they are, because they drive cars. So if you're rational and if you're thinking about what's really a danger to you, you should be really selective about when you get in a car and drive it somewhere.
Yeah, I completely agree. 100%, right? Well, but I've actually thought about it too, because when I did sell my ARs and I did get into the whole yoga thing, and I was kind of looking around going, this thing's pretty safe. I'm not heading to Chicago. I know where not to go. And I know where myself should be. And I do look around and I'm like, it is pretty safe. And I did sell mine, and I did realize, I'm like, I just really don't want to take a human life now. I'm not trying to be a superhero. I'm not I don't know if I need one anymore. And I did, and I sold them all. Well, not all of them. Not all of them, but that really was my mindset. And with everything that was going on, I got to tell you, the far left made me change my mind. The far left made me come up with an argument that I think kind of should be the end all be all. I don't want to have an argument about a 30-round magazine. I'm not having that argument. What I say is, if you take countries that are similar to the US, so what does that mean? Pretty large, really large, militaristic, right? Diverse population. Okay, who can you compare those to? Well, I think we can compare ourselves a little bit to Russia, and I think a little bit to China in certain aspects. And people want to say, well, gun control works in other places like Australia. Well, I don't think we're the same as Australia. I think we're the same as these kind of big countries. And they have gone the left route. They went the left route. And what it turned out to be was a lot of gulags. And I think of myself, I go, are school shootings awful? Do I understand why some of these young kids in Florida are yelling at us because they fear going to school because of the shooting? I sit there and I go, I'm sympathetic to them. I get that. I never had to deal with that. Yeah, you're right. If you have this active shooter drills, that will leave an impression on you, and not in a good way. So to the mothers out there who are like, I don't want my baby shot. I can't argue that. But what I do know is, or what I do think is the left, for some reason, ends in gulags. And I know myself, and I know I would rather get shot any day than be put on a train and sent up to a re-education camp in Wisconsin and freezing my balls off. I'm lazy. That sounds very uncomfortable to me. And I don't, and if I had to choose between guns or gulags, I have decided the gun is the way I want to go out.
Yep.
And I don't think that's an unfair statement.
And what the wokesters have demonstrated, wherever they manage to snatch even a little tiny piece of power, they immediately use it to coerce people. Immediately, with absolutely no self-consciousness and no indication whatsoever of any sort of reticence, to exercise their newly acquired power. it is something about the leftist mentality that, yes, it leads to firing squads and public shamings and, all manner of really vicious, ugly behavior. Now, of course, we've seen the right break bad as well, but the left seems to do it like on cue. Like there's a very short sequence that leads to that when left and power.
And it all goes the same way. And I'm not even against the left. I really like Chris Hedges.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that guy. And he said that the left really shouldn't be in power. They should be in power it should be 55-45. Republican, right, left. The rights are good managers that keep the trains on the tracks. The 45 are good ideas and the heart and everything. But you got to do this balance, and we kind of are better when we have a little bit more of that conscientiousness, that control. Hey, and I'm all for the left coming in at the right times. No child labor, women's suffrage, all that kind of stuff. Perfectly for it.
Universal health care.
Sure, show me a plan, right? Show me a plan on how we get there, and I'm not against it. I mean, I do think that the more control you give, the more you centralize something, the worse it goes, which is kind of the left, right? So maybe universal healthcare, we just can't get there because it's too much control. I don't know. Is it awful right now? Does it have a ton of flaws? Yeah. Do I prefer it? Man, I don't know. I don't know if I want them to have that control. I'm in the VA. I've been to VA in Las Vegas, in Dallas, in New York. I don't think you want the VA. I really don't. I don't think anyone wants that. And that's
if I were ill and I had access to the VA, I would certainly take it because I don't have access to anything else. I'm 14 years away from Medicare right now. That's my health plan. Stay healthy for the next 14 years.
Right. And I don't disparage you for that, right? If situation reversed, I'd be the exact same way. I don't know if I want that power to be in those knuckleheads' hands, because it could be a Trump again.
What's the alternative? I mean, whose hands is it in now? How is it that we have a private interest buys up a drug which should be in the public domain? They make a slight tweak to it and then they put 2 zeros on the end of the price.
Don't argue with you.
Yeah,
I don't argue with you.
Where's the country in the world whose economy was crashed by having universal health care?
Not going to argue with you.
Yeah, where's the country where the people are clamoring to pay more because they'd rather have a private system? Nobody who has it wants to get rid of it. And we don't have it. And a lot of people here would like to have it.
Okay, so I hear you, but there's a cost to these things. And that's what I don't see on either side. Like there's a pro and a con to both sides. And everyone talks about their pros and not their cons. And that's what gets us in trouble. Everything you just mentioned, I'm agreeable to that to an extent. Yeah. If you show me some things, I'm going to believe you, right? But what's the con? Well, people are more on the government tip. They have more power. We become less resilient. I see in the United States, we become fatter. Well, the fatter I don't want to pay for fat people. I don't.
Paying $100,000 for, an appendectomy when it could be done for 10 doesn't make people fat.
No.
Having a predatory for-profit healthcare system isn't what's causing us to be unhealthy.
I'm not arguing that solution either. And I would even say the food and the fast food and what we do completely. Yeah. So that's why I'm really not upset about this reset. That's why I'm kind of hoping this really is a reset. I'd love to see the Monsantos of the world go bye-bye. I'd love to see JP Morgan not be here anymore. I would. I have no affinity for this. I feel like some people use this like American way of life or whatever we are because we're the God's greatest country. No, we can be better. We can do better. And I hope that happens. That's why I'm hopeful.
I've lived in Australia and Australians enjoy a better quality of life. They have a government that is more responsive to human needs than the United States. I mean, just as a person who has lived in both places,
sure,
I can tell you, Australia does it a lot better for people of normal means. If you have a lot of money, the U.S. is great. It is amazing. The healthcare system is amazing. If you're a millionaire, you wouldn't want to subject yourself to somebody else's nationalized, everybody gets a piece healthcare system. You might have to wait in line.
Hey, I hear you. This is what I think happened. I think the United States has such a good marketing thing that people who want to work their ass off to be rich and make money, which there's a lot of people who that's their goal.
Mm-hmm.
They know where to go. I'll go to America. They have that destination. What you're looking for, like whatever country provides that, I mean, it might be Australia. They just don't have a good enough marketing program to get you there. And I mean, that might sound like someone who can, who has maybe a little bit of money to be able to have that option, and not very, 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 very few people have that option. But I think that's what this whole thing of America was. People would scrape to get here to make that money, and that's how we grew. And that just became the underlying culture of our economy. And then people who don't have the genetic emotional tendencies, like the 5 personality traits, and that's not where they want to be, that's not what they see value in, I could see how they look at America and they're like, this thing's completely crazy. And I hear you. I am on your side. I agree with that. But I also see the other side of why people try to get here and what that mentality does bring to the table in some ways. There's a cost, but there's also some benefits. So I'm open to hear it all. And if it's worked, hey, let's try it. But anything the government gets involved in, they never leave. I think about welfare, and I just see that as the worst thing we could ever do to the human spirit. I mean, especially that multi-generational thing. I just think, I look at that from behind, and I guess I'm judging it, but I just think that's got to be the most aggravating lifestyle there is. For me.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I see, like, I was a Andrew Yang supporter, but universal basic income was not the thing that made me like him. Like, I supported Andrew Yang in spite of his UBI proposal. Some people can take that $1,000 a month and put it to really good use and live a very effective, satisfying life. But a lot of folks will just go with the flow and respond to the incentives that are presented to them. And we live in an environment defined by, maladaptive, perverse incentives. We are incentivized to do stupid stuff that is bad for us all the time.
And because it's fun and
succumb to it. You really have to.
It's fun and it feels good.
What's that?
It's fun and it feels good. I'm going to make a prediction right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone gets their $1,200 or $1,300 or whatever the amount is, and this is what I consider an IQ thing. There is never going to be more sneakers bought.
Maybe. That's fine. I have no problem with people buying sneakers. I mean, even if they're overpriced sneakers.
With the $1,200 that's supposed to be for food, I'm just saying, like, I'm not against it. Do with it whatever you want. Mm-hmm. But I think there's going to be articles to show what people spent their money on, and you're just going to shake your head in disbelief. And I think that's just the way it is. And I don't judge it.
If you give money to people who are impulsive and who are just going to spend it on tangible stuff immediately, that's an amazing stimulus for the economy. When you give it to banks and say, loan it to people, and they say, nah, we're just going to sit on it, that's not any sort of stimulus.
I'm not arguing with you.
Yeah. I mean, I have absolutely no problem with people getting their money from the government and buying computers or TVs or shoes or whatever seems real, but it's a real thing that somebody made and somebody sold and somebody transported, and they generated economic activity every step along the way. And somebody at the end of the line who wouldn't otherwise have had the money to buy it did. Great.
I'm going to make your argument stronger for you.
Go ahead.
And that is the just punch to the gut that it is watching the circus try to get this money to everyone, the length of time and the ups and downs. And it's going to be 3 weeks that's what Mnuchin said, right? That thing is insane compared to the Federal Reserve pushes a button and gives 10 times that amount to the banks. And they've been doing it for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So
you're not writing checks.
No, they can immediately give $700 billion. No one even batted an eye. No one questioned it. No one said anything. So again,
nobody said, how are we going to pay for it?
No, it's just foregone conclusion. Talk about a moral hazard. So yeah, and then to give each one of us $1,300 is this like act of God to do it. I'm completely on your side in that regard. I'm not arguing with you. I don't think they should give it to the banks. but it still doesn't make me wrong that they're going to buy whatever they're going to buy. And it's just what they're going to do. I can't get mad at a big dumb dog being a big dumb dog. But when I look about all this, and when people start realizing that they got a measly $1,300 to shut up, because that's what it is, it's hush money.
Yeah,
and
it's don't kill us money.
Right. And then finally, when a number comes out about how much the Fed has given to our banks and other central banks, and that amount of money comes out, I mean, they're going to go crazy.
See,
they're going to go nuts.
Here's my fear for the bad effects of handing out money to everybody. Around here, it's just going to mean an increase in overdose deaths. People who,
that's my sneakers.
A smaller dose. Yeah, but it's very different. I wish that the people who were hooked on heroin and who, were dying and who would only take it, with a partner so that one can give Narcan to the other if somebody if they stop breathing.
I hear you.
I wish they were hooked on expensive sneakers. That would be such an improvement.
I hear you. I mean,
I have Narcan in a drawer over there. I don't use heroin, but it is entirely responsible for me to have an anti-overdose drug on hand. Even though I don't know who, I might need to use it on, there's so much addiction around here that it is just, it is the responsible thing. It's like having a fire extinguisher.
I agree.
So sneakers, man,
I get it.
Sneakers.
I get it. But if they buy sneakers and not food, they're going to get hungry that much quicker. And then when those parents don't have food for their kids who's crying at night, just like you said, my kid's hunger is more important than you. And
we have on this continent the largest continuous swath of high value, high productivity agricultural land in the world, interlaced with long navigable rivers. Starvation is not going to be the problem here. More people will die from cold because they don't have utilities, they don't have heat. More people will die from adverse drug interactions. I mean, starvation it shouldn't be on your list of concerns.
Okay, well let me throw out one more scenario for you, because I was in Vegas for a year. Vegas is in the desert. Vegas is in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
Vegas only has one thing that has any power or influence in the entire state, and that's the casinos. They've all shut down. And that's going to be a little bit for those to get back up and going.
Now, they do make nice shoes in Vegas, right? There's a big shoe company there.
Oh, no, that's just an internet thing. They're just in between.
Oh, I was in Vegas a few years ago. I stayed with somebody there. I don't remember the name of the company, but he pointed out this shoe company to me that he said that
Zappos.
Was a big look. What is it?
Zappos.com.
Zappos?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
They're downtown. They don't make shoes. They're just the software. They're just the internet provider to have as many different shoe options at a cheap price, I think. They don't make anything.
So the shoes are made in China?
Shoes are made in China. Yeah. So, I mean, just think about this. You're a logistics manager, and your supplies are in Los Angeles, because that's where most likely the goods are going to come from, the ports, to get to Vegas, because the 18-wheelers are going that. Maybe they're coming from Arizona, who knows? But they're probably coming from LA. Well, if I am a Smith's, Kroger, or whatever your local grocery store is, if I'm a manager who's having problems keeping 10% on the shelf within a 300-mile radius of me, why am I going to go out to Vegas? I might not be able to. Like, what if the trucks, it gets too hot, or the parts? Who knows? But they're in the middle of nowhere. My thing right now is people need to get to food and water, get closer to the food, because you don't think starvation is a problem. And hell, you might be right, but why would I take that risk? Right now, I survey the battlefield and I say, I need to get next to food and water. That to me seems like a good idea with all the things that are going wrong right now. And I don't think that's overreacting. I wouldn't be if I was in Vegas right now, I would have gotten my car and already left. I mean, obviously I left Fort Worth, but give me one good reason to stay in Vegas right
now. Yeah. There are places where there are more people living there than the local environment can support
in any sort of rational system, California, all of Southern California, way too overpopulated. Nobody should be moving to California.
No water.
But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that 2, 3, 4 years from now, you and I will both be more concerned with carrying extra weight than we are with, not getting enough to eat.
Hey, you know what?
And
I'm
disastrous. Economically, we can live through a disastrous 3 or 4 years, and we'll still be worried about getting fat in a few years' time because we are awash in cheap calories.
I hope you're right. I really do. And if people on the comments or whatever think I'm absolutely out of my mind, man, that would be lovely.
Most of my audience agrees with you more than they agree with me at this point.
And I get why you're doing what you're doing. I really do. And you're fighting the good fight. Good for you.
Hey, Brent, that's a good note to close it on.
Yep.
Say, KMO, you're doing good work. Keep it up. That's a great place to end. We just have to wrap it up because I actually have to leave my stronghold here and go out and shoot some video for the local TV station. And these file sizes, once they get over an hour, they get unmanageable, and we're well over an hour.
So. Okay. All right. Well, hey, it was fun. It was great meeting you, and hope to do it again sometime.
We will do it again. As Jim likes to say, we will ride again.
Absolutely.
All right.
See ya.
Take care.
Sorry, we had some initial trouble connecting, but now, see, I had my my iMac had to get wiped because I had some kind of a software problem. So a lot of things that had been installed became uninstalled, and that only happened like 2-3 days ago. So
I have the reverse problem. You're a Mac guy. I'm a PC and Android guy, but I have an iPad that I got because I wanted to draw on it because I like the Apple Pencil. It is my favorite, digital stylus. But I hate everything else about Apple. I hate the operating system. I hate the design aesthetic. I just hate everything about it. So I go months without opening the iPad. Yeah. But yesterday I opened it because I had signed up for an online course in graphic narrative, which part of the course was using a program called Procreate, which is only available for the iPad. So I got the iPad out, and I just got into this really frustrating, password dance with Apple. I needed to unzip a file. And apparently to unzip a file, I had to download a particular app from the App Store. But to do that, I had to log in. And I don't use the thing, so I don't know what my password is. And every time I open the iPad, I end up resetting my password. So every password that I know, and have committed to memory, I have used with Apple before, and they won't let me use them again. So, it's just so frustrating to me that it's this weird sort of boutique approach to computing. And I'm just used to, there are programs, there are files rest in a particular place in a nested hierarchy that I can access with the computer, and I can, given the file type, I can open it with any program I want, and it just doesn't work that way with the Mac, and it drives me insane.
Well, I was on the phone. It totally
knocks me right out of any creative, thought process.
I was on the phone with Apple a lot over the weekend, and because I wiped the hard drive, and I had to set up a whole bunch of things. And they changed their iTunes apps and programs so that to me they were like incomprehensible. And I told the lady on the phone that if Steve Jobs was still alive, he would go up to Tim Cook's office and pistol whip him for doing that.
Steve Jobs is the architect of a lot of what I hate about Apple.
Yeah, well, there's one thing about
well with any other manufacturer that everything has to be its own thing. It can't be standardized, and comprehensible to people from the general world. It's sort of the hardware equivalent of AOL.
Well, the thing about Apple products that I really, really hate the most is that, and I think this came from Steve Jobs, is that in this attempt to achieve the ultimate design sleekness, they hide everything. So you can't find anything. Like, where's the toggle? Oh, it's hiding behind these 2 dots over here in the corner, Well, how the fuck am I supposed to know that that's where I go to change the volume level? Or it's just insane. The sleekness that they impose on all of their products is just maddening.
I agree.
And there's lots of people listening who absolutely don't. And, you know, if anything we've said is going to generate hate mail, it will be anti-Apple sentiment.
Uh-oh. Well, I'll gird my loins for that.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Jim, before we go, this is in the vault now.
Okay.
What do you think of the response to coronavirus in just basically shutting down all economic activity, nobody going to work except people who are absolutely essential, most of us hiding out at home? Do you think that this is the correct approach?
It's very hard to say, and the arguments have been out there, and they're kind of obvious. You know, the main one is, you know, you have to flatten the curve so you don't overwhelm the medical system, and that's an argument. You know, I can't argue with that. You know, I've had some correspondence with a fan who writes to me regularly, and he insists that the whole thing is a hoax and that it's you know, the Democratic Party, the DNC in China, ganged up on Trump to you know, put this virus into the system to get rid of Trump. So, you know, my basic position about this is that I can't see all these other countries doing the same thing if there wasn't some pretty good reason for it. I mean, why would New Zealand and Argentina